Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. On Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Welcome to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, publisher of Aspire Magazine, the beloved inspirational digital magazine for women since 2006. What do you do when you've achieved your goals? You still don't feel happy and satisfied. Because guess what, my friends? Happiness does matter. Even a slight increase in happiness impacts both your current performance and your resilience. Not to mention, being happy feels good. Today, joining me is my special guest, Rebecca Morrison, lawyer turned happiness coach and the author of The Happiness Recipe. She'll be joining me today to offer some practical, quick ways you can make the high-value investment in your happiness. Even though Becky was a happily married mom and lawyer with a 2-decade career in big law and finance, she felt like something was missing. That feeling led her on a quest to figure out whether it was possible to be both successful and happy. Now a happiness coach and author of The Happiness Recipe, a powerful guide, living what matters. Rebecca helps successful but unsatisfied high achievers find their happiness recipe so they can live happier, lead happier, and build happy businesses. Becky's also a graduate of Wellesley College in Georgetown Law and is also a UC Berkeley Executive Coaching Institute certified executive coach. Well, what a journey, Becky. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me here.
Well, I got to tell you, when I heard about your book and we first connected, I was like, oh boy, I serve entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs in my business, especially those in the personal and spiritual development. So the topic of happiness and success comes up all the time.
Yeah.
And just that sentence that I opened with, what do you do when you achieved your goals, but you don't feel happy? Have you discovered too that, well, I can tell by your journey that you have, that sometimes we are chasing our goals, chasing our dreams, thinking that when we get there, happiness, joy, and butterflies comes out.
Exactly. Yeah.
So share your journey.
Sure, I can do that. So, look, when I tell people that I'm a lawyer turned happiness coach, they automatically have questions, right? Because it doesn't seem like a logical path from point A to point B. And my journey with this topic or with this notion really stretches kind of all the way back to my childhood, but that's not where I'm going to start today. I'll start with, I did what a lot of us do. I got the job that I thought I should and got the, had the marriage, had the kid, thought everything was like I had checked all the boxes and kind of found myself in this moment, I call my bathtub moment, wondering whether I was doing it right, whether this was how I was supposed to achieve happiness. And so I found myself one night on the floor of the bathroom. This was about now 16 years ago, with my toddler daughter in the tub and the cordless phone clipped to the back of my pants and the toilet seat cover down and notebook on the toilet seat cover and papers spread all around me. And I was doing two things. I was giving my toddler a bath in the tub, and I was on a phone call with an expert witness. At the time, I was a litigator at a big law firm on partnership track, preparing them for their upcoming testimony. And in that moment, I had two thoughts in very quick succession. My first thought was, who says you can't do it all? Like I'm doing a great job at work. I'm on partnership track. I'm having a lot of professional success, and I'm here. I'm a present mother. I'm involved, in the bedtime routine. I'm literally doing it all. And then very quickly, I had the second thought, which went something like, and I'm exhausted, and this is unsustainable. And what if I'm not really enjoying the work that I'm doing? What if I'm not really happy being a lawyer and I've invested all this time, money, and energy to getting to this place and I'm, feel like I should want all of this and yet I'm not sure that I do. And what do I do about that? And so I spent kind of the next decade plus of my career exploring that and figuring out how I could have both professional success as I defined it and happiness in my life. And then about 3 years ago, decided to become a coach and ended up kind of coaching and writing and speaking on those topics.
Talking about an epiphany, huh?
Yeah.
Epiphany. And I believe so many of us, I mean, I've had different epiphanies. I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years. And I remember in my first business in the 90s, feeling like, well, if I just get that award, then I'll feel that happiness. If I just get this, and of course, you're always pushing, striving, chasing. It wasn't until I came into balance, in my case, with my feminine, right? Like balancing both worlds, that I realized, shit, Linda, it was never out there anyway.
Well,
like
and
that was my epiphany. Becky
Yep.
was like, what? And it was like, oh my God, that's so liberating.
Yep. And I think that's actually, I mean, at the crux of, where we think about happiness. I think we're sort of taught, and I don't mean explicitly taught, but taught through stories and through what the world tells us to prioritize, that happiness is supposed to be an end state, right? That we're supposed to arrive at happiness. When we've achieved the things, then we will be happy. But as you point out, happiness is neither an end state nor external, right? Happiness is a process and happiness is internal. And making that shift is a huge, important part of discovering your own personal happiness recipe.
And you know what I love about the book title, Recipe,
Mm-hmm.
right? It really steps out at me as like, so tell me what led you to use that word, because before I share my thoughts about it, because I was like, yes, that's what it feels right. So why did you choose that word?
Well, I think, it's a funny thing. The word sort of found me, but it felt very right because it's not, what I tried to provide people with in the book is a framework that they can use to uncover the sort of mix of things that's right for them in their lives. And I enjoy cooking, and I am actually a recipe follower to an extent when it comes to cooking. I like to have a framework. I like to have that guidance. I like to have some idea of how to put together whatever the dish is. But I also like to figure out how to customize it so that it works for me or for our family. And so that was why I liked the word recipe, because it's got this notion of sort of like framework, guidance, building blocks. But then within that, you get to choose how you want to do it. Do you want to have a little less, cinnamon and a little more nutmeg? Do you want to reduce the amount of sugar? Do you want to increase the amount of sugar? Does it need more salt? And so you get to play with finding the flavor that's right for you for the current season of your life. But I wanted to give people the tools or some guidance in how to do that.
And that's how I saw it, right? Because unlike you, I'm not a cook, so I need to follow a recipe. You can speak to my honey about that. That's a topic for another day. But when I saw the happiness recipe, I'm like, ooh, I'm going to get, and that's the word that came to me was framework. I'm going to get the framework and I can tweak the flavoring as desired.
Yes.
Right. But without the framework, I wouldn't have the result. Right. Because if I just do a mishmash of ingredients with no framework, then I'm still struggling to find that combination. But with a framework, you have the basis. So one of the things that you talk about is happiness hacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is your most favorite happiness hack?
So let me zoom out for just one quick second. I think now about happiness in two ways. And so the book focuses on how to architect a happier life for your current season. And then I also think about sort of things we can do daily to increase our happiness kind of on an everyday basis without re-architecting or getting into any big recipe or framework. So it's like the difference between a meal and a snack, right? And one of my favorite happiness hacks actually, I think, is applicable in both worlds. And it's this: I think one of the things that I've found in working with people on happiness related issues is that very few of us have a great understanding of the essential things that we can drop her into our lives that could bring us more positive emotional experiences, more joy, more contentment, more gratitude, more just more happiness, right? And so one of the things that I really like to do with people, and it's kind of sounds simple, but again, I think we are not encouraged to take the time to do it, is to sit down and have a conversation with a friend or with yourself and ask yourself, what is it that brings me joy? Okay. And I want you to, write down 5 to 7 things that make you smile, that make you happy, that make you content, that bring you joy. And then I want you, because when I do this activity with most people, I get one of 2 answers. I get either, I don't really know, which is fine. That's great. Let's figure it out together. Or I get some sort of big stuff. What brings me joy? Well, it's time with loved ones. And that's simple, but it's also a big category of things. Or it might be things like vacation. A lot of people look forward to taking that time off. I want you to take those big things and I want you to dig a little bit deeper. I want you to ask yourself, what about those things brings you joy? With the goal of getting to a place where you have sort of, again, what I call your essential sources of joy, things you could drop her into your life at any given moment. I'll use vacation as an example. So if you're one of those people who thinks, yeah, vacation is one of my sources of happiness, great. What is it about vacation? Is it a break from your life and your responsibilities? Is it a location? Is it interaction with nature? Is it having more space and time for your thoughts? Is it having time that you're laughing with your family or connecting in a positive way with people that you care about? Dig as deep as you can to get it down to the very simple stuff. And I'll use an example from my own life. We often go on vacation to the beach. One of my favorite things to do is to stand on the beach and 2 things, listen to the waves and have the sun on my face. Well, guess what? I don't need to go to the beach, technically, to do either of those things. I can go stand on my front porch on a sunny day. Today is not one of those days, but on a sunny day and put my face in the sun for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and get that same happiness hit that I would get when I'm at the beach. But I have to remember 2 things. I have to remember to seek it out. And then I have to remember when I'm doing it to savor it, to treat it like a delightful piece of happiness candy, right?
Yeah, and it's so simple as you're describing it, but I have to say it's those moments. I'm all about intentional living and an intentional business. And the more I incorporated those little moments, I didn't have those words back then, like when I was trying to heal my striving and pushing. I'm going to tell you, it changes the whole energy of your day.
Yes.
We're going to take a quick break, Becky. When we come back, I want to dive deeper into this because I love the simplicity of it, but there is a power in this simplicity that can really shift everything. So I'd love to continue the conversation when we come back from our break. I am with Rebecca Morrison. You can learn more at untanglehappiness.com. We'll be right back, my friends.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Inspiration for a woman's soul. Aspire Magazine, inspiring and supporting women on the path of self-discovery. Claim your free digital subscription today, which includes access to thousands of dollars of personal development bonus gifts from Team Inspiration partners. Claim your Aspire Magazine subscription today at subscribetoaspire.com.
Hey America, we need to have a little talk. We've got more food than we know what to do with in this country, yet 17 million kids in America are struggling with hunger. Makes no sense. Luckily, the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks has volunteers gathering excess food and getting it to hungry kids. They're kind of like food angels. Hey, become a food angel yourself by supporting Feeding America in your local food bank at feedingamerica.org. We can't do it without your help. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Hi everyone, this is Shay Parker, the host of Best of the Best, which airs live right here on IOM Radio every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm super excited to bring you expert guest hosts, spiritual discussions, free psychic readings, and so much more. I can promise that you will not want to miss this one-of-a-kind, fun, yet touching, down-to-earth show. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on OTR-FM. This is Shay Parker, and I can't wait to see you there.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversation. With me today is Rebecca Morrison, lawyer turned happiness coach and author of The Happiness Recipe. So I just love the insights that you shared is, I have this conversation with friends and clients. They're always wanting to escape their life, like all their energy is going into a vacation that they got planned 18 months from now. I'm like, well, what about now? Like you're like projecting 18 months and you're holding your happiness for that moment. So everything you're saying like is resonating with me. Me and my honey about 2 years ago, we live in the middle of the woods on a spring-fed pond. So we have like a 20-foot beach and we're right on the water. And every day, usually around 4, sometimes 4:30, we go down to the chairs. It's our ritual. And, as spring comes, we don't do this in the winter. And we just sit there.
Yeah.
Sit there. We watch the water. And it brings us such joy. It isn't like we are doing anything. It's like this precious moment where we are tapped into each other, but we're tapped into nature and we're just being. And it's become a beautiful ritual for us. That's what you're talking about, right? These moments of happiness incorporated into your day instead of waiting for something outside, like something big.
Yeah. And there's two parts to it. And I just want to say, like, some of these happiness sort of essential sources of joy could be like that ritual that you just described, which is beautiful and sounds lovely. And then they could just be a menu of things that you keep kind of at your fingertips for when you need to inject a positive moment into your day. So I don't go out onto my front porch, every day at the same time and put my face in the sun. But when I'm feeling stuck or when I'm struggling or when I'm feeling low energy, you can bet that I will get up and do one of the things, very short, 2 to 5 minute things on my list of essential sources of joy. Another one for me is I'll put on a song that I love and get up and dance, right? And it's, again, really simple, but we lose track of that simple stuff because we live in such a go, go, go world. Now, the second piece that I want to talk about real quickly is, just in the moment of having that positive emotional experience, whether it's you sitting by your pond or me standing up and dancing or standing in the sun or whatever it is, the science tells us that 2 things happen just with that positive emotional experience. Number one, it actually broadens our thinking. So when we have that positive emotional experience, we come out of it more creative, thinking about the world in a broader way, better equipped to solve a problem, which is why I like to do this stuff when I get stuck. The other thing that happens when we have a positive emotional experience is we build. And to oversimplify it a little bit, what that means is we're actually making deposits into our resilience piggy bank. So every time we experience a positive emotion, we're actually increasing our resilience. Why does that matter? Because as we've learned in sharp relief over the last couple of years, the world is going to throw tough stuff our way. And it might be tough stuff on a global level or tough stuff on a personal level, but it's our resilience that enables us to weather those storms. So to my mind, intentionally seeking out positive emotional experiences whenever we can is just a benefit to help us weather the inevitable tough stuff. In addition to, it's fun, it feels good, and it helps us actually be more effective at whatever it is that we're trying to do.
I found that to be true for myself. And I do have little things I love to do. I'm looking at one of them now. It's like I always have my inspirational audiobooks handy and those little those I call them daily books. It's like a inspirational quote for every day of the year.
Yep.
It's like sometimes when like I can tell them it's too much in my head, I either pop on a Wayne Dyer audiobook for a little while. I have a room spray, all natural crystal cleanse room spray that I use. It brings me back into my present moment.
Yes.
And for me, that's where my happiness is here.
Yes.
Not out there. So I love that. I love that you shared that it also helps us build resilience, which we could all use right now. So as you wrote the happiness recipe and was making your change from, big law and finance to happiness coach, what are some of the key elements that you discovered were coming up time and time again with like your clients or the audience you were serving around this topic?
Yeah. So the way that I have articulated what I believe the recipe for maximum happiness to be is actually super, super simple. It's in this season, do more of what matters to you and less of the rest. But there are some pretty big things that tend to get in the way of our execution of this on this super simple recipe. And I've divided those into what I call 3 gaps. And I think of them as the know, believe, and do gaps, or the authenticity gap, which is, do we really know what matters most to us in this season of our lives? Are we able to articulate that, to identify that, and to sort of vision a life that includes more of that and less of the rest? And then I'm going to skip the believe gap for a minute, because that's what a lot of people do. They go right from the knowing, closing that authenticity gap, into the doing, closing the physical energy gap, trying to live in alignment with that recipe, to say, okay, I know what I want more of, I know what I want less of, let's go do it. But the problem is when they skip that middle gap, the believe gap, or the mindset gap, or I call it the emotional energy gap, a lot of times they miss addressing the beliefs and feelings that exist, or working with their nervous system. And what happens is they try to make a shift in their lives, and then they find themselves very quickly pulled back into old patterns. And so addressing that mindset is really important. So you asked for themes, and I would say that that's, in general, in working with people on these issues, I often see that they have to go through each of those kind of gaps to look at what's really standing between them and executing on that very simple recipe. And everyone has a little bit of a different profile, right? Sometimes I'll find people who are very clear on what they want, but just don't know how to go about executing it, or are feeling stuck because they have some beliefs that need to shift. And sometimes I'll find people who haven't even had time to figure out what they want, because maybe they knew when they were 20, or they had a dream as a kid, but now life is full and the pace is fast, and they haven't. And we live in a world where we're not encouraged to be connected to ourselves. And so they haven't taken the time to really form that connection and listen to what it is that they really want. They're stuck in the shoulds of what the world is telling us to want, and what the world is telling us that success looks like. So it just depends on the person. But I see it often that there's a lot of work that needs to get done, particularly in those first 2 gaps, in the know and the believe gap. And then once we can clear out the stuff that needs working on there, executing on it is actually the easy part.
And for me, I'm really resonating with the belief and mindset. It wasn't until I looked at that stuff, which wasn't always fun, because it's part of who you are. But it wasn't until I worked on, because to me, that's like the seed that begins it all.
Yes.
So if you don't unbury the seed that was, I don't want to say poisoning, that's too powerful, that was kind of causing your self-sabotaging behaviors.
Yep.
You can't get to everything that you want. So yeah, that was a big one. That one really resonated for me. But I love the phrase you use, authenticity gap, because I think, and I can only use myself for example, is until I could identify what my desires were from the shoulds of the world and the expectations of others, that it was almost like an excavation to get there, to find out what my truth was. And excavation is what it felt like.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. And it's interesting because, we hear a lot, like sort of in, I was going to say pop culturally, is that even the way to say it? But we hear a lot in the world about envision the life that you want and picture it. And think about it. But what we don't hear is the next layer of that conversation on the mindset front of, okay, so you've got this beautiful picture of what it would look like to live the life that you want, but what would you need to believe about yourself or about the world in order to live that life? And do you hold those, like, which of those beliefs that you would need to believe to have that life are inconsistent with what you believe today? And just that simple exercise of naming can be so powerful to show us what needs to shift. So yeah.
And there's so much information in that space, right?
Yes.
And in the book, you break down the content into those areas. Like part 1 is the authenticity gap, part 2, the emotional energy gap, and then part 3 is the physical energy gap. And I noticed that you have what I love about your book, I should say, is you have the action steps. Like you're speaking to us and then you're like, okay, I get it. Now here's some areas where you can work on that step that you're given. It goes back to the framework.
Yes. And I am kind of a personal development junkie. Like I have been for, gosh, as long as I can remember in my professional life. I've picked up personal development books and looked to them for guidance when I'm trying to shift something. And my biggest beef with personal development books generally, not all of them, but just as a general category, is that I will often read something and be like, wow, in theory, that is so amazing. I love that idea. What on earth do I do to implement it in my own life? And so I really wanted to leave readers with practical tools that they could use to sort of implement the concepts that I present in the framework in their own lives. And I try to do that kind of for every step along the way, also with the notion that this is not a one-time process. Finding your happiness recipe isn't one and done, as much as you might like it to be, because your circumstances change, the world changes, your seasons change, and the recipe is going to change. But what I wanted to do is empower people with the toolbox to be able to pick it up and say, oh, I need to shift something, but I'm not sure what. So let me go back and do some of the exercises out of the authenticity gap section to figure out where I need to focus. Or I'm trying to build a new habit. So let me pick up the chapter on habits and figure out how I want to build this habit. And so I wanted it to be sort of a framework that people could walk through and then also reuse as life throws new challenges your way.
Well, I love it. I love how it's all broken down. And we're going to talk about that more when we come back from our next break. I encourage everyone to visit Becky at untanglehappiness.com. Be sure to grab a copy of her new book, The Happiness Recipe, a powerful guide to living what matters. We'll be right back.
This is OTRFM, part of the IOM radio network.
It's time to begin the adventure of a lifetime by nurturing the most important relationship you will ever have, the relationship with yourself. Kelly Grimes, self-nurturing expert, speaker, and author of the bestseller, The Art of Self-Nurturing, a field guide to living with more peace, joy, and meaning, shares that a self-nurturing practice is not about being perfect or completing another thing on your to-do list, but rather nurturing a relationship with yourself. In The Art of Self-Nurturing, you'll discover the inspiration, examples, reflective questions, and self-nurturing practices that will empower you to become the artist of your own life and see self-nurturing as an art form. Rather than living from obligation and overwhelm, you will learn to cultivate a life filled with self-compassion and self-love. Order your copy today at artofselfnurturingbook.com and receive the Self-Nurturing Starter Kit as a supportive gift.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Hailing Light, on OMTimes Radio every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Hailing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
Me, a cat moving in with a new human. It took a little getting used to. She has these weird games she likes to play, like this giant feather. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. It's almost like she thinks I enjoy it. But seeing how much fun she gets out of it, well, I guess it makes it all worth it. Humans.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
This is OTR FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Welcome back, my friends. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm here today with Rebecca Morrison, lawyer turned happiness coach and author of The Happiness Recipe. So I have your book in front of me, and like in one of the areas, like breakthrough behavior, say no. Ooh, that's a big one, right? Learning boundaries. That was probably one of my, I'm going to be 60. That was one of my greatest struggles because, you know, I had the belief system that I had to be superwoman for everyone else and put myself at the end of the list. So is that something that you see come up a lot, is people understanding their own boundaries and learning how to say no?
Yeah, I think it comes up really frequently because when you think about the overall happiness recipe, it's do more of what matters and say less of the rest. And when you think about the profile of kind of most of us, but especially those of us who are driven and high achievers, it's to have a very full life. So the first thing that you need to do as you're sort of walking this path of uncovering your happiness recipe is create a little space. And the literal only way to create space is to subtract. And subtraction requires saying no. And what I've learned is that people with very full or overfull lives, if they were comfortable with saying no, they'd be doing it already. So it is a big one that comes up, and it implicates some of the other kind of breakthrough behaviors that I talk about in that section of the book around guilt, around your nervous system. I mean, they're all sort of interconnected, but yeah, getting yourself to a place where you're comfortable owning what matters most to you, prioritizing what matters most to you. It's a big deal. It's a big, big deal. Saying no is a big part of that. And it's also intimately tied to self-worth, to believing that you are worthy of prioritization.
That was you just touched on what mine was back then. It was the self-worth, like, you know, who am I to say no to them? Yep. Like everything was more important than I was.
Yep.
So you just hit the nail on the head for that. And, you know, even many of my friends in this age range, late 50s into the 60s, they're waking up now going, what have I done? You know what I mean? Like, well, where am I in my own life?
And it's not just people in that age range, right? Like, I think I really truly believe that the world, and I mean that in the broadest sense, the way that we are living right now is not encouraging us to slow down and take stock of those kinds of things. We are in a very go, go, go world, a world that prioritizes speed, a world that prioritizes, checking the boxes, a world that prioritizes consuming a truckload of information on a daily basis, not a world that prioritizes or encourages silence or self-connection or self-reflection. And so it is easy to all of a sudden open your eyes, kind of metaphorically speaking, and realize, wow, how did I get here? And do I want to be here? And where do I go now? And so I think you can be having that thought, like you said, at, in your 50s and 60s, or you can be having your thought like I was when I was 20 something sitting on the floor of that bathroom.
Oh, you're exactly right. Aspire for 16 years. Guess what our mission is? To inspire women to live deeper, more authentic, and inspired lives. And I'd say the last decade, I'm noticing younger and younger are waking up earlier to and breaking the rules, right? They're saying, I'm not going to live by my shoulds. And I have a client that I think she's now 32, and she said, when I stopped living from the shoulds, my whole family, who kind of programmed, that was their history, right?
Yes.
She said they thought I was the black sheep, the rebel, what is wrong with me? Because she was breaking all the molds. She says, now 3 years into my journey, they look at me and go, how did you do that?
Yes.
So she's more joyful. She's not as angst and anxiety ridden. And so you're right, more and more. And I think that's the call right now.
It is
Come
the
back
call.
home to yourself.
It is the call, and it is a emergence of that. I mean, you said it earlier in our conversation, of that feminine energy, right?
Mm.
The masculine energy, or rather the patriarchy, is all about climbing the ladder and then continuing to prove that we deserve to be at a certain level of the ladder. The feminine energy, there's no ladder. It's not about proving yourself, and so it's about your worth being inherent. It's about your worth being something that you were born with. It's about the fact that, it's about the fact that your worth doesn't need fine print or caveats. It's not, I'm good enough, even though I insert thing that I wish I could be different in here. It's actually, no, I am actually just good enough as I am. Even if I ultimately change and grow, I was still good enough today. I will be good enough tomorrow, and I will be good enough 6 years from now. And nothing is going to change that.
Yeah, and I work with a lot of leaders that are in their feminine, up and coming, and and the biggest thing, in fact, my whole business is based on a feminine collaborative business model that I came up with in 2009 because I couldn't fit into, Becky. I couldn't fit into the masculine marketing model, but I couldn't identify that. I was just going through my own spiritual awakening. Like, why do I feel like a square peg trying to go into a round hole? You know what I mean? So it was my own personal awakening that led me to change my whole business model. And it's what you said is, for me, the feminine is, I want to be in flow every day.
Yes.
Right. And people go, well, how do you get shit done? I'm like, listen, honey, I run 5 media brands, all inspirational. I work 4-day weeks. My team works 4-day weeks. I take 14 weeks off a year. I said, this is coming from the woman who used to work 16-hour days because I thought that work had to be hard because that was my belief mindset. And I said, so you can do this. You can find your flow. You can tap in. And something you said, it's not linear. Like masculine is a ladder. The feminine, I always see when I see energy, is it's like a spiral.
Yes.
This beautiful, like vibrating spiral where you are always moving, but you're not going towards something.
Yes.
I can't describe it. It's how it feels in my body. So you here have a lot of those conversations too with your clients.
I do, because I think look, especially to, the clients that I have who are in corporate jobs or in law firm jobs, they are still operating in a very traditional masculine model of success, right? And it's not that it's wrong, for example, to want to move from associate to partner or to want to move from director to VP. It's not wrong to want to have more responsibility, different responsibility, a different title. But it's, again, the notion of that movement or that box that you check of the new title isn't the thing that's determining either your worth or your happiness. I think that's the big shift that gets made, right?
That is the big shift. And think of it, a lot of careers, especially yours, big law and finance, the two, right?
Yep.
There was a container that you, especially as a woman, were expected to fit in and morph into.
Yes.
Instead of being allowed individually, whether you're a male or female, to come in and be who you are authentically and come from that place of service. It was like, oh, we will mold you. And then I believe that so many, the words I've heard is, Linda, I lost myself. Yes. I didn't know where I began and where my career ended. Is that something you personally experienced too?
I mean, definitely, like it, especially when your career is taking so much of your time, it is easy for it to become your identity. And that can be the source of tension and friction and problems, right? For sure. And I talk a lot about, I was on a podcast when I first started, before my book came out. So when I first started doing this work, and I was talking on this podcast about how I had made a lot of left turns in my career, right? Like I went from being an associate on partnership track to saying, no, I want to do something different. And so I kind of did an unexpected shift into the admin side of law firms and worked in a hybrid legal role. And then when I decided it was time for something new, I left that entirely and became the COO of a small financial firm. And then when I decided it was time for something new, I left that entirely and decided to become a coach. And so, what this person asked me is, well, if you just made all these left turns, didn't you end up back where you started? Like, and I think it's so interesting, your image of a spiral. I'm like, no, it actually to me is more like a nautilus shell. Like I'm centering more and more and more around who I truly am. And that's what I feel like the journey that people kind of are on when they have that realization of, whoa, my career has become my identity. I think what needs to happen is the left turn that brings you a little bit back to yourself, that brings you closer to yourself, that reconnects you more with who you are beyond just your career. And your career can be an important part of your identity, right? Especially for those of us who are operating in purpose-driven, mission-driven spaces. But it is not all that you are. It is not, you are something beyond just the work that you do.
Oh, so true. And I just love how you described it like the nautilus, because I can see that. Yes.
Yep.
Just from an energy point of view of how I feel myself. We're going to take our final break and we'll be back in a moment. I am here with Rebecca Morrison, author of The Happiness Recipe, a powerful guide to living what matters. You can learn more at untanglehappiness.com. We'll be right back.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Are you ready to experience the unshakable love and unleashed passion you really want? Great news! Discover what thousands of people are doing to transform their relationships in ways they never thought possible. And your partner does not need to participate in the process to enjoy the results you want in your relationship. Relationship expert and Aspire magazine columnist Stacey Martino and her husband Paul are the founders of relationshipdevelopment.org and Relationship U. They have successfully empowered thousands of clients with tools and strategies that really work to transform their relationship. Any relationship. And your partner does not even need to participate for their proven system to work for you. Transforming your relationship is possible, and it begins with you. Take the first step and visit relationshipdevelopment.org today.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Elia, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
You're listening to Inspired Conversations, and today we're talking about happiness and resilience. So, what are some of the biggest pitfalls, Becky, that you see tripping people up as they try to live happier lives?
So there's a couple of things that I see, not so much with the people that I work with, because they have some additional support, but kind of more broadly in the world that I see. The first thing that I see, and I'm sure you've heard it, right? People talk about toxic positivity. And so the first thing that I see is people mistakenly believing that in order to live happy, it requires that you continuously shift your focus to positive emotions, to optimism, to happiness, and therefore bypass the difficult stuff. And I think it's really, really important. And part of happiness or living happy for me is having the tools to navigate all the emotions. so that I'm not afraid of anger and sadness and fear and the difficult moments. I am equipped to experience them, to feel them, to honor them, to notice the messages that those difficult feelings are bringing me, because every feeling has a message, and then not to get stuck in them. And that is very different than this sort of toxic positivity, fake it till you make it, just look over here, find something positive, or, oh, like always there's a silver lining. And that may be true. There may always be a silver lining, but I don't want people to feel like they have to look for that to the exclusion of experiencing what you're actually experiencing.
I was caught in that, I'll be honest. When I got on the spiritual development journey, I was a single welfare mom, queen of self-sabotage, high school dropout. In 91, I had my awakening. And I went from being so in anxiety, depression, victimhood, that's, what I was living from my childhood, to going, oh, I'm going to get on the personal spiritual development path, which I am so grateful I did in 1991. And went so far the other way of, I never want to feel that again.
Right.
So we didn't have the term way back then, toxic positivity, but I can identify it now.
Yep.
Shoot, I went through that phase of, oh, no, I'm not going to feel that again. So that I would keep reframing. Now I'm at the point of, I'm a master manifestor, but I also know if I don't feel, I can't heal.
Right.
And so for me, it's like just an hour before this call, I got some news and I was like, oh no, I have a radio show. And I'm jumping up. I go, Lynn, let this out right now. And I let myself sob.
Yeah.
Because I know enough about me, my spirit, and my body that even if I held it in for 2.5 hours until all my radio shows were done, that is not going to be of service to me.
Correct.
And that's what you're talking about, right? Feel it. My biggest thing was learning not to judge it.
Yes.
That is big. And I'm hearing it from my clients too. They're like, but I have all these tools and I can't believe I can't get myself out of it. I'm like, you have to go through it, not get out of it.
Yeah. You're not going around it. You're going through it. That's exactly right. Yep. And I think it's like, I get excited now when I mean, this is going to sound kind of weird, but when I can have a moment where I allow myself, whatever the emotion is, where I just allow myself to experience it, I get really excited because I spent a big part of my life not honoring my actual emotions. And in part, that was because I worked in an industry for a long time where there wasn't a lot of room in the work for emotion. And so I was just trained, like, we don't go into our heart, we stay in our head, and this is how we go. And so for me, the part of it has been healing the connection between heart and head, and healing, allowing heart a seat at the table more often has been a big shift for me. And it's an important shift. And it involves, like we said, all of the feelings, not just some of them.
Yeah. Our journey, like emotionally, has a lot of similarities because I can really relate to that. I used to say, I feel like I'm just a person from the neck up. That was 30 years ago. I noticed I kept using that frame because I was so disconnected from my body down, which of course is also along with your body, it's your thoughts, your emotions.
Yes.
I stayed so much up there because, you want to control everything. Well, I will think this through instead of allowing myself to feel.
Yes.
And now I feel fully integrated, but that was a big one. And it's funny because I hear the phrasing, like I love watching people's phrases.
Yep.
And they always turn, and I can tell when someone's living in the head by the phrases they use. And I know they're yearning to get in their heart. So we talk about that is, what's the story there that you believe you only exist in your head?
Yes. Well, and I mean, look, it is also about reconnecting to, in my mind, getting out of your head is also about reconnecting to your intuition, right? Yes. Because for me, my intuition doesn't live in my head. It lives in myself, in my soul, in my body. And when I'm not tuned into that, I'm not tuned into my intuition. But we don't operate in a world that gives us permission to act on our intuition without an intellectual justification for it. And so one of the things that I've worked on personally and that I work on with a lot of my clients is reminding ourselves that when our intuition tells us or guides us in a direction, we don't have to be able to intellectually explain it. No justification is required to trust your intuition. But that is not the way the world works, and that is not the way we are taught to operate.
No, we're not. We're taught like shut it down, don't feel.
Yep.
Since I started, I call it dancing with my intuition, listening. I remember at first it's like, can this be real? Now every decision, business, relationships, I hear it, I honor it, I do it. Like I've built up the trust over the years in my intuition.
Yep.
And when you can, as you know, when you navigate life from that place, that's where flow is. Intuition is the feminine.
Yes, it is 100% where flow is. And it is so fun when you can finally sort of lean into, the image I have in my head is like a hammock, right? Like when you can like relax into believing that your intuition will support you and put you in flow. It is a really fun way to live.
Yeah, it's powerful. For me, it's almost like I know when I'm not there.
Yes.
Because I'm human. And all of a sudden, like, I'll go, ooh, this has been a full day. Are you here now, Linda? Like, it's just a question I ask now. And I immediately come ground into my heart, drop down, I should say, not ground, drop into my heart. And now, because I have been using these practices, I can shift, I call it recalibration. I recalibrate quickly.
Yep.
And I want to invite everyone, because I'm holding your book in my hand. I love the back cover because it says, we are born to be happy, but somewhere along the way, our lives get cluttered. And then there's another statement, and it kind of ties in our whole conversation. By decluttering your days of the shoulds and the have-tos and focusing instead on what actually matters, a road toward fulfilling joy will be laid before you. That's what we've been talking about all this time, right? With the happiness hacks and you given some insights into some of the happiness pitfalls that people can come to. I am so grateful that you were able to join me here today. I want to encourage everyone to get over to untanglehappiness.com, continue following Becky, grab a copy of her book, The Happiness Recipe, a powerful guide to living what matters. Becky, in the last couple minutes, is there any insights or piece of guidance more than you've already shared that you feel led to leave our listeners with?
So the one other pitfall that we haven't specifically talked about that is kind of a big deal is the role that our nervous system plays in sort of governing our behavior, right? So our nervous system, one of its primary jobs is to keep us safe. And we all know this as the fight, flight, or freeze response. But our nervous system doesn't look at safety from a really analytical point of view, right? It just says, I want to keep you alive, connected, loved, fed, sheltered, those kinds of things. And so when we ask when we decide to make change, often our nervous system will have a thought about that. And the thought is usually something like, no, thank you. I'm not interested because I know how to keep you safe here and I don't know how to keep you safe somewhere new. And so here is better than somewhere new, even if objectively somewhere new would be way better, right? And so I think beginning to be able to understand the role that your nervous system plays can be really important, kind of in that belief space, but it's a less conscious thing, right? It is something that is running in the background, but is sending you very clear sort of physical signals that suggest that that it doesn't want you to do something. And so being able to distinguish that message from your intuition and from sort of an actual valid message is really an important part of being able to make change. So I just wanted to highlight that for people, that there is this other actor involved for each of us that can be sort of a barrier to making change.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought up that second pitfall, because it was such important information for them to know for their own journey. So Becky, I wanted to say thank you for joining me today. I want to encourage everyone to visit untanglehappiness.com. And until next time, my friends, choose love, choose joy, choose happiness. Blessings, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. Join our sacred space every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern and meet leading female visionaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy is a soulful venue where guests share the obstacles they've overcome, along with wisdom and lessons learned on their personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic and soulful living.